Welcome back to the Bob Davis Podcast YouTube channel. This is the YouTube channel where I do videos occasionally, shorts as well as longer form videos, to let you guys know that there's a new podcast up. Usually I'm in front of the camera, but I'm doing something different tonight because I am in a Wisconsin time warp. And that is the title of podcast 1137. I'll put the link in the description box. I decided because of the placid nature, the last few days has just been incredibly quiet, that at sundown with the fire, this is a perfect sort of thing to talk over and have you just look at this environment, because that's kind of the impression I wanted to leave from the podcast audio. So when you listen to the audio podcast, which is available on iTunes and Spotify and so forth, just follow the links in the description box. Then you'll get the idea, because I did a podcast audio. It was much later. It certainly wasn't at sundown, but I did a podcast sitting right in front of this fire, talking about how after 60 days and 6,000 miles, I got to Wisconsin, and I didn't realize how tired I was. Nomad travel, generally speaking, most of the nomads I know don't do what I do, which is I travel extensively. And so I hit, I don't know, something like 14, 13 states, maybe more, and literally 6,000 miles, because I spent a lot of time going back and forth and up and down when I was on the west coast of Florida, as well as the east coast of Florida, and then on up through the St. Simons and Jekyll Island in Georgia and South Carolina and the Outer Banks in North Carolina, all the way up through Virginia, across to Tennessee, up through Illinois, on up through to northern Wisconsin, where I am right now. And I was so tired, I just couldn't bring myself to do anything. And I was a little taken aback and surprised. But that's what happens when you do 60 days and you're on the road and you're sleeping in truck stops and Walmart parking lots when you can, getting kicked out of state parks like in Florida and other places where you're supposedly not supposed to camp, so to speak. Truck stops are kind of my friend, and I go to truck stops a lot. So anyway, then I was talking about how the recent auroras, the northern lights that came as the result of the sunstorm recently, had so much energy. I mean, it was sitting out here under the northern lights for 2 or 3 nights in a row. It just gave me so much energy. And then I felt it before it happened. I could feel was very jacked up and had sort of an anxious feeling before. And of course, I'm on the NOAA mailing list, the NASA mailing list. I knew there was going to be sunspots, but I didn't really read the information. I knew they were going to be at least C4s. I didn't know they were going to be a C5 or on the lower end of the C5 scale or on the higher end of the C4 scale, which is pretty high. And we got an excellent display of the northern lights, which was amazing. It seems like I've been here a lot longer than I have, and so this podcast is called Time Warp Wisconsin, or Wisconsin Time Warp, because it feels like I went through a time warp. It feels like I've been here for months, and yet I've only been here for 2.5 weeks. And this is, you are seeing my living room. This is basically my lakeshore. I'm in a lake that usually doesn't even get populated until after Memorial Day. Mainly because you would look at it and you think, when you see it, you think, oh, this is perfect. Depending on the day, it'll either be rainy and cold, or it will be like this. This is about as good as it gets around Memorial Day weekend. We joke that I have put the dock in along with my brothers-in-laws and my father-in-law back in the day. And it seems as though there would be chunks of ice floating on the lake when we put the dock in. Usually we put it in before Memorial Day weekend, and there have been some weekends up here that were very cold. I mean, just cold. I remember one weekend we put the dock in, it was snowing, and at the end of it, we were all so cold. He was like, "Get in the house and get in a hot shower right away." And then we went out for beers and anything we could do to get ourselves warm after that at the local, watering hole. So the weather is unpredictable, and most of the time people don't come up for Memorial Day because they'll get here and it's beautiful on the way up, and then of course you wake up Saturday morning and it's cold and rainy, misty, that kind of cold and rain, and the next day it's kind of the same thing. So most people wait until the first couple of weeks of June to come up, and they really don't get here in large numbers until the 4th of July. So after mid-June, on a night like this, you will see boats and you'll hear boats. Right now it's pretty much the fishermen and a few of the guys that have been retired and live up here, and they take their pontoon boats around the lake at sundown. But if you listen, it's utterly quiet. I mean, we're actually ahead of the bugs. Yes, there's mosquitoes here, but mosquitoes are always here. That's one of the reasons I have the fire late in the afternoon, because the heat of the fire and the smoke keeps the mosquitoes away. They don't bother me too much, but so this is kind of a cool thing to do, just to sit here and sort of let you see the lake and watch the sundown while I'm talking. So, Wisconsin Time Warp. I talked a little bit about the nature of driving the back roads and being in rural America most of the time. This lake is pretty far up into farm country, and I have been in farm country most of the trip, avoiding cities. I think I went through Charleston. I didn't go through Nashville proper, but I went through Franklin and Murfreesboro and some of those towns around Tennessee. Certainly, what is it called? Brentwood, which is not the Brentwood in California, but the Brentwood in Tennessee, where all the music stars live, because nobody wants to live in Nashville anymore. And I just saw an article about how something like 40,000 or more Californians have moved to Nashville in the last few years. And they have bid the price of real estate so high, people, native Tennesseans, are furious over this situation with them bidding up the price of real estate. And let me tell you something, Brentwood is like Beverly Hills. It's pretty crazy. We went to breakfast at this place there, and it was amazing to see the Bentleys and the Mercedes and the Teslas all over the place. But most of the time when I was traveling, I was in rural America, and the picture that we are seeing in the media, I've said this more than a couple of times, is not the picture that I saw traveling through pretty much 1/3 of the United States this year, because what I didn't include in this trip was the northern trip in the fall. So going out to Arizona, I left here and I went out to New Hampshire and Maine. So I covered the eastern part of the Midwest, went up into New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then Maine, and came back through Massachusetts and points west all the way back down into Arizona. So in the last year, between the most recent trip that I took, which is really from Quartzsite, Arizona, through the Redneck Riviera to Florida, all the way down around the bottom of the state, all the way back up on the East Coast, the Treasure Coast, north of St. Augustine, all the way up into North and South and North Carolina and Virginia, and so on, West Virginia, on into Tennessee and points north. So I've seen probably 1/3 of the country in the last year. And I don't see a country that is riven I don't see a country. I see people living and working together, and I see people in various states of difficulty. Some are not in a state of difficulty at all, and others, seem to be just getting by. When I look at YouTube, when I watch the news, when I hear people talk about things, they paint a dire picture, and I don't see that when I go down to the front. And I dare say that I doubt very seriously if the people that are saying these things, the people that feel the need to constantly predict the future in the media, and in particular, it's not the mainstream media so bad these days as it's all these idiots on YouTube, like myself. Although I don't spend time predicting the future, I'm out of that business forever. The experience that I had was of a very wealthy, abundant country. Now, when I say wealthy and abundant, I didn't really say this in the audio podcast, but I should qualify it here. What I mean is, oh shit, I'm not recording. Or am I? No, I'm not recording. Oh no, I'm recording there. Yeah, okay, we're good. I'm not editing that out. I didn't think I was recording, but I forgot that you don't look at the recorder, which is the audio interface. You look at the camera. So yeah, we're still recording. Anyway, I mean that the country is abundant. Whether you're driving across the country at the peak of the growing season and you see all of this farmland, you're driving through Indiana, places like Lafayette that are industrial beehives, or you're driving across the West or driving through West Texas and seeing this incredible production of petroleum products. It's a country that is wealthy in its people and wealthy in its resources, as well as abundant in things like food and other things. And I met a lot of people, and I do meet a lot of people, and I've met a lot of really amazing, very creative and abundant people. And they're not artists. They are mechanics, and they are, people who work at stores and people who work along the way in places that you see. One of the myths that I hear all the time is how these young people don't want to work anymore. And every time I went to a truck stop, Flying J, Love's, wherever, especially in rural America, you see young people working. I have to say this because it blew me away. I was at a Love's someplace in Tennessee, and usually at the counters, you see middle-aged and older people working. But this particular Love's was just staffed with all these young people for the most part. And there was this young woman behind the counter, probably 20, that was, she was a model. She was stunningly beautiful. And I didn't really interact with her. I asked her a question and then whatever. And she was, shucking and jiving with her friends and really a nice kid. And it's like, here's a person who really could be a fashion model, and here she is working at the Love's because she wants to work. So I don't know, what the state of the country is when you actually get out and drive and see what's going on. I see a lot of really negative stuff, especially on YouTube, because this is how you get views. You find some negative handle to use for an SEO title, and you make some negative video. And people watch it because they want to engage in the Schadenfreude, I guess. I don't know. But when you travel rural America and you travel on back roads, it's a whole different experience. It's a whole different experience when you sit out here and you see this tremendous, sunset right now. I feel bad that there's so much negativity and there's so much beauty when you just hit the 2-lane roads and you go and you travel only on 2-lane roads across most of the country. You see a different America. And I suppose someone that didn't like what I'm saying would say, well, obviously you didn't go into the cities. I don't go into the cities because this truck doesn't do very well in cities, number one. And number two, I don't particularly want to drive through lots and lots of traffic. And I do lament the level of development in Florida I do lament the level of development in this particular central northern part of Tennessee, for example. And overall, though, I see a level of activity in this country, building, building new businesses that are open, things of that nature, that is far different from what it was when I was doing this in 2020. I've been doing this for 4 years full time, and throughout the 2000s for at least 10 years in different vehicles, driving across the country in various places. This is probably the best that I've seen in the country. And if you pay attention to what you see on YouTube, or in some cases the mainstream media, with everyone trying to predict the future, and if this continues this way, and if that continues that way, this horrible thing is going to happen. How about we just deal with it when it happens? I dare say that, yes, if an economic calamity befalls us, we do have the resources, the human capital, and we do have the resources to solve these problems that we have. And that's as far as I will go in terms of so-called partisan politics. I think we're getting an inaccurate picture of what's really going on, and the only way to see it is to go out and interact with people and travel. And this is the thing about travel that broadens the perspective. The Northern Lights were incredible. I was out here, and one of the things I do want to say is that I find it almost impossible to stay in a house. We have cabins in the other direction from where the camera is pointing up the hill for various people in the family, and I could go up there, and I could stay in a cabin, and I could watch television in the evening and not be out here. But I am camping out just like I camp out in Arizona and wherever I am. I'm already tan again, and I'm always outside, and my clothes always smell smoky, and I have a fire, and I have an unlimited supply of firewood here, and I have oak, and I have pine, and I have birch, and I have probably elm and some of these other trees, and it's fantastic. And so I am camping out here. I'm cooking my meals out there. So this is my living room. That's my hearth right there. And that is my view, and I have my trees, and then behind me I have a little table and some chairs, and a little Jeep that I drive around to go up to the hill when I need to. It is a sense of abundance without being or spending or using a lot of stuff other than the firewood. So it's kind of like a time warp where you forget. I mean, I thought it was Friday today, and it's Monday. It's bizarre. People say, well, and I said this in the podcast, and I often do, because people often ask it. Every time I forget that I've answered it 14 times, people ask me, what's it like? This is what it's like. Except you're out here when it's raining, and you're out here when it's snowing, and you're out here when the weather's bad, so that you can enjoy this experience when it is fantastic and wonderful. So, just like it is tonight. So I'm sitting here watching this beautiful sunset and shooting this video. Actually, I'm letting you watch the sunset while I talk, and looking forward to the heat of summer. One more thing I want to say that isn't in the podcast is I'm shocked at the number of videos that are now showing up on YouTube that purport to have been done a year ago or 2 years ago about the Northern Lights prophecy, that the Northern Lights are the beginning of the end, and after the Northern Lights will come the 3 days of darkness that is supposedly predicted. And everybody else is saying, the astrologers are all saying weird things about the Northern Lights, and on and on. And I'm just going to say this. This sunspot is going to come back around, and we may yet have a major solar event this summer. So if we do, I'm going to say this because the source for this actually was a YouTube video. I can't remember who did it, but I looked it up, and there was a Russian scientist some years ago, 100 years ago, who did a lot of research on solar energy and solar events and solar minimums and solar maximums, And there is a correlation according to the work that this guy did. And then later, some University of Gothenburg somewhere did some work on it as well. And they found that there's 3 sections to a solar event. The first is the solar minimum. Then there's the run-up to the solar maximum. Then there is the solar maximum. And really, if you want to add a fourth, it's the run-down from the solar maximum. We are already at solar maximum for sun cycle 25, which is what we're in right now. And my question to people was, could you feel the northern lights? I could. I mean, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I could feel the energy, both internally and externally. And then once it started happening, I was just amazed. The research showed that social structures are challenged in the run-up to the solar maximum, but in particular, through the solar maximum and the run down from the solar maximum is when they really kick loose. So these solar activities do affect human beings, and usually in a mass way. It's kind of, I'm not quite sure how it has affected me. I find it absolutely fascinating. Anyway, you'll have a chance to test that out, because when this sunspot AR, whatever the series of numbers is, comes back around, it could very easily give us a C5 event, which would be higher on the C5 scale than what we had, which was very low on the C5 scale, or very high on the C4 scale. So C4 is like a hurricane that's a category 3 or 4, depending on where you're at in the C4 scale. C5, well, then you get into a much more significant event that might cause a lot of problems with communications. That sunspot did release a glancing blow. It went in the other direction, but it caused ham radio to lose signal above, I think, 30 megahertz. So that was pretty significant in the last week or two. So if we get another solar event, then we can test out some of those theories. Meanwhile, I am here at the lake, and I am enjoying the sunset, and I'm going to let you go, because I think 17 or 18 minutes is plenty for these long-form videos. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing to the Bob Davis podcasts, both on audio on iTunes and Spotify, as well as here on YouTube. Thanks for the likes and the comments. And thanks for watching, most importantly. Bye-bye.